there UK stretch fabric fans. I'm going to show you today, hopefully, I've never done this before, how to turn the Sirocco by Deer and Doe, which is usually a jumpsuit, we've done it on a sew along before, into a fitted set of dungarees. There was an idea I had based on a friend of mine, Carla, who runs Hula Fit, which is a hula hooping fitness company. She wore this super cute little space pair of dungarees and I want them. So I got this amazing space print fabric from UK Stretch Fabrics. So pretty. And I have made the trousers as per the Sirocco instructions. So I've made those up completely, including the side seams, which on the jumpsuit you don't do until you've attached the bodice. We have no bodice. I've done the side seams, so these are basically a pair of trousers waiting for a waistband. So I've done everything apart from attach the waistband. Now to turn these into dungarees, I need to do a little bit of trickery. I need a bib front, so let's start with that. So to make my bib front pattern piece, what I've done is I've measured on me how wide I want the bib front, so how wide I want it top and bottom, so at my waist and at my chest. And then I've added a seam allowance to that. I've also decided how high I want my bib front, so from my waist to where I want it to finish, and I've added a seam allowance on that as well. So top and bottom, side and side, I've added a seam allowance. So my bib front has come out as 10 inches across by 8.5 inches deep. I've added a 1/4 inch seam allowance on all sides, and from that rectangle, everybody's will be slightly different, I've cut 2 from my matching fabric, so one will show on the outside and one will be the lining, because I don't want to have to turn under hems, I hate hemming. And it just gives the whole thing a better structure, and it's easier then to attach our straps. So, straps. What I bought is these little sliders. So it's a rectangle sort of metal loop with a slider in the middle, because I want my straps to be adjustable. So what I'm going to have is a D without the slider, which I've just plied the slider off of one. That's going to attach to my bib front. Then I'm going to have the slider on a strap here, so there's no loose ends, and I can lengthen and shorten the straps because I don't want to have to be too accurate when I'm attaching the straps. This way I can just make them really, really long and adjust them on the slider. So we'll come back to that in a minute. These sliders are 25mm, which I think is an inch. Yes. Let's work in inches and millimetres. Product of my age. So I need my straps to be able to fit through my sliders. It's no good if they're too wide or too narrow. If they're too narrow, the whole thing gets twizzled. If they're too wide, they just won't go through. So I need my straps to be 25mm finished, or slightly less. Very slightly less, we're talking like 3mm less. So to do that, I measured out 25mm width, and I've added, if I don't put the fabric through the blades on my overlocker, it gives me a 7mm seam, so I've added 14mm. So what I've come out with is 40, so 4 centimetres, 1.5 inches, and that's the width of my piece of fabric for my strap. So if you have a 25mm loop and slider, you want a 4 centimetre, 40mm width on your strap. To get the length of your strap, what I've done is taken a soft tape measure and taken it from my waist at the back, whoops, so from my waist at the back over my opposite shoulder, so from my waist on my right at the back over my left shoulder to my waist on the front. Now the reason I've done it all the way to my waist is that I want a bit of extra to play with. I don't want to be clutching when I'm threading everything through, so I want a long strap. That way I'll have plenty to thread through, deal with the loops and mess about with. I can always take it off, harder to add it back on. So on me that came out as 38, I think I've done them to 40. So err on the side of longer, but measure from your back waist on one side, so my back waist on my right, over my left shoulder to my front waist on my left. That's how long you want to cut your straps. Now because I'm working in jersey, this is quite a lovely lightweight cotton lycra, I don't want my straps to be super stretchy because they'll get stretched out, they won't do the job, they won't work. So what I've done, in addition to the 2 pieces per strap, so I've got 2 1.5 inch by 40 inch pieces of my main fabric. Extra to that, I've cut the same size out of a bit of old bedding. So this is just a piece of woven cotton. It's just some old lining or an old bedsheet or something like that. You'll never see it, it doesn't matter. What it's there to do is reinforce your strap so that your strap doesn't stretch when you're wearing it. So let's start by making the straps. So we're going to take our 2 pieces that we've cut for the straps. I'm going to lay one of those on top of my woven piece of strap. You could equally as well use interfacing and just interface one of the straps. I have a love-hate relationship with interfacing on stretch. I find that it tends to bubble and I don't like the look of that. So I tend to use a sew-in interfacing or a bit of old bedsheet instead of iron-on. But whatever's your poison, don't let me stop you with the iron. Once I've got my interfacing on the back, on the wrong side of one of my strap pieces, I'm going to take my second strap piece and match it to the right side. So I've got right sides together of my main fabrics. All will come clear, I promise. So of my main fabrics, I've got right sides together. I've then got my woven on the wrong side of one of the pieces. I'm going to sew these together down the long edges and across one of the short edges. That I'm going to do on my overlocker. As usual, you can be really good and pin everything like a well-behaved sewing person. I'm not going to do that because I'm not one of those. Every time I do one of these videos, sewing standing up just blows my mind. Now you probably will find that your stretch fabric stretches a little bit against your woven. Don't worry too much about that, it'll be fine. What you'll probably end up doing is just trimming the end when you get to the other end. But we've made it super long, we've got loads to play with. Make sure all my raw edges are matching up as I go. If you've pinned this, it's probably already done. Go, so I've sewn all the way down one edge. It's gotten a bit twisty and there's a little bit of main fabric sticking out over the end. Not too worried about that. I'm now going to sew exactly the same down the other side, and I'm going to start from the end that I just finished on. That seems counterintuitive because you want all the drag to be going the same way, but I want the stretch fabric against the feed dogs so that it's got the best chance of pulling through at the same rate. So I'm going back the other way. The whole thing's a lot more stable now you've done one seam anyway. Look at those lovely rainbow seams that no one's ever going to see. So I've got one end where all the raw edges are really nice and one end where it's kind of sticking over the end a little bit. So I'm going to sew this end closed that's nice and neat. So I'm just going right over the top. Like that. So now I've got an inside out strap. Now this bit is an absolute pain in the bum. I've got to turn this the right way around. Now for this I have a very, very high-tech tool. Hold on. This is my high-tech tool. It's a paintbrush, but it's got a lovely smooth wooden handle without a pointy end. So it actually works really well for turning straps. So I'm just going to sort of started it. I've pushed the end inside, start it with my finger, and I'm going to put my paintbrush down. And what I'm trying to do is kind of get all the fabric on the paintbrush until the end comes out the other side. Eek. There it is. And then I'm going to remove my paintbrush, holding onto the end. Whoop! Ta-da! These are a little bit easier than your tiny, tiny loops, just for being a little bit bigger. There's more to get hold of. It turns a bit easier than the really skinny ones. So now I've got a strap. It's a little bit lumpy. So what I'm going to do to stabilise it even more, because this is the part of the garment, this is holding the garment up, basically. I don't want this bit to fail. So I'm going to top stitch all the way along all the edges. There's that bit that was poking out the other end. I'm not too worried about that. I've not lost any real length by that happening. So what I'm doing here is just giving it a cheeky little finger press, just to work all those seams out. If you're using a sewing machine, you could probably clip the corners before you turn it. Might give you a nice sharp corner, but again, I'm not too worried about that, because what's going to happen to this blunt end that you've sewn closed is that's going to end up going around one of the sliders, and you're actually never going to see that end. I've only sewn it closed so that it's finished and it's not going to fray or do anything silly. So what I'm going to do now is top stitch from the open end all the way down across the bottom and all the way back the other side. So for that I'm going to use my sewing machine. And I'm going as close to the edge as possible. When I get to my closed end, what I want to do is put the needle down, lift the foot, turn 90 degrees, sew the end, so that I don't have ends at the end. So needle down, foot up, turn 90 degrees. Well, I'm not quite close enough to the end there, so I'm going to turn it back, put the foot down, give give it one more stitch. Lift the foot up, that's better. Back down. And the same when I get to the next corner, needle down, foot up, turn 90 degrees, foot back down. So what I have here is on strap, turned and top stitched. I have rainbow on my bobbin still, so it's looking really pretty under there. I'm actually going to put the purple side uppermost. Now what I want to do is create two more very small versions of this. So what I've done is created two teeny tiny straps. They are 2.5 inches long. So you're going to do exactly the same process as you did for the straps, but just a 2.5 inch length. What I actually did was a 5 inch length, finish that and then cut it in half. Now what you're going to do with your small pieces and your loop without a slider is create a tab. So I'm just pushing my 2.5 inch piece in there, folding it double so that the loop is trapped in my tab. Now, just for stability reasons, I'm going to tack that on the sewing machine, just so it stays put, because when I sew it, it's going to be inside a seam, and I won't be able to see what it's doing, so I'm going to tack that on the sewing machine, which is really awkward because it's super bulky. So what I did was just go over a couple of times just to make sure that that stays in place. So that's not going anywhere now. So I've got my two tabs, two sliders, two straps. Next thing I'm going to do is my bib front. Now, as I create my bib front, I need to trap my tabs in the top corners. So what I need to do, I'm going to decide which way is up, which way is up. Does space have an up? I don't think it does. I don't think space has an up. So I'm going to put my two bib fronts right sides together. And square, and I'm going to pop my tabs on one of my long edges, so whichever edge you decided was the width of your bib front. So my width is 10.5 and my length, my height is 8.5. So my rectangle is longer on top and bottom than it is on the sides. So it's these corners that my tabs need to go in. Now, when I put my tabs in between my layers, I want to put them down so that when I turn everything the right way around, they're pointing up. Seems really obvious, but I guarantee I'd get it wrong otherwise. Now I want to avoid my side seam allowance, so I'm going to put them about 1 centimetre away from the edge. So they're going Did I decide if it had an up? I don't think it does. They're going 1 centimetre from the edge, maybe a little bit more. Yeah. So I want to be able to still get my overlocker foot down the edge of there, so I need to make sure I've got enough flat space that my overlocker foot can get down the side. Just thought of that. Thank you very much. Same on the other side. Now, are we feeling scientific? Let's measure either side of this. So I've put it 2.5 centimetres away from each side. I've done that by eye, and it's the same on both sides, so we'll go with that. I'm going to fold that back, and I'm going to be really good. I'm going to pin it. Because I guarantee this is going to be an absolute pain because of how bulky that is. I've got so many layers there. It's probably going to take a couple of goes going over it to make it behave. So let's give ourselves the best chance and pop a pin in there as well. So I'll start by doing that top edge. This one I'm using the overlocker for. Wish me luck. So I'm going to check that before I go any further, that my tabs come out the top. You can still see my tacks there, but I'm okay with that. That's fine. So now I'm going to do the 2 sides. So down the 2 short sides. Hopefully I've left enough space between my tabs that I can get my foot next to them without too much drama. What I should have now is a little bag that I'm going to pull the right way around. I should have a bib front with some tabs on top. So that's how that's going to sit on me. It's going to go into my waistband here and into my straps at the top. So that's the next thing we need to do. Actually, what I might do, just for prettiness sake, is top stitch that edge. And I might even go over and just make sure my tacks are covered. Maybe I do care. So I'm just going to take a slightly bigger seam allowance on the top so that my tacks are covered. Making this up as I go along, you know. The best way. It's That's my favourite type of sewing. Make it up as you go along. So now my tacks are covered. So however far in you tacked your straps, make sure your seam is big enough to take them into the seam so that you don't see them when they're done. Top tip that I didn't think of before. We're all learning. Do you know what? I'm obsessed with learning. A little bit addicted to it, I think. Always got something new going on. Took a trapeze class at the weekend. That was so much fun. Love to learn. There we go. Right, now I'm going to top stitch that. Just trying to get this as close to the top before I turn, so I'm going to do the same, needle down, foot up, turn 90 degrees. I'm just easing, this whole thing is rather bulky, so I'm just easing my tab under the foot to give it the best chance of getting caught. Lift my foot up. Bit, all very technical. And you don't have to top stitch this bit if you don't want to. It is a bit of a battle, but it's kind of worth it. It just looks so finished. There we go. Right, so now I've made a bib front. You can give this a little press at this stage if you like. Mine's gone a bit wibbly wobbly, but it'll be fine. Once it's stretched over me, it'll be cute as hell. Now what I need to do with that front is trap it into my waist. So what I've done with my waist pieces is cut them a little bit deeper than normal, and I've cut two. So normally with the Sirocco pattern, you've got one waist strip that goes around you. In this case I need 2 because I need to trap both my bib front and my trousers and my straps at the back into the waistband. So I've got 2, and on the long edge I've added an extra bit of seam allowance, so I've added about 7mm above the pattern piece so that I've got seam allowance to play with. So what I'm going to do with that is find the centre of my bib, and the centre of my pattern pieces, and I'm going to put one pattern piece over the top of the front, right sides together, and I'm going to put one pattern piece underneath, so I'm sandwiching my bib in between my waist pieces. Like that. Don't need to do any stretching of anything at this point. I'm just laying the 3 together, my 2 waist pieces and my bib. Like that. So I've got my bib upside down in between 2 waist pieces. So I've added the seam allowance onto the long edge of my waist piece, I found the centre of each of the waist pieces, and I've found the centre of my bib, pinned the whole lot together, sandwiching the bib between the right sides of my waist pieces. And with whatever seam allowance you added, you're going to stitch all those together. Making sure my raw edges all stay lined up. There we go. So what I have now is a seam along there, and I'll turn my waist down to create a waistband with a bib front. So that's how that will be, whoops, on me. Hopefully it will stay put a little bit better. And that will get attached to the front of the trousers. But before I do that, I need to tackle my straps. Now my straps I'm going to do exactly the same. I need to figure out where on my back I want my straps. So I want them to cross at the back. My shoulders are quite slopey, so things tend to fall off them. So let's say I want my straps. Ooh, this is all a bit of a guessing game. Let's say I want my straps 1.5 inches from the middle. So on my back pieces, again, I've added the extra seam allowance to the long edge. I'm going to find the raw edge of my straps, the edge that I didn't sew closed, and I'm going to trim that little flappy bit off because that's a bit unnecessary. We don't need him clouding the issue. And I'm going to measure from the centre how far away I want my straps. So what did I say, 1.5 inches. And I'm going to put them in at a very slight angle so that when I put them on the waistband they already want to go across my opposite shoulder. And we're not talking about 45 degrees, we're just talking just slightly off level. So just angle them towards the middle very slightly. What's that, maybe 20 degrees? Why not? And I'm going to do the same on the other one, making sure they are equal distances away from that midline. Do you ever find that when you just eyeball something it comes out better than if you measure it? I get that all the time. Then what I'm going to do is flip my other back waist piece down on top. And I'm going to pin where those straps are to keep them in place. Big move. And I'm going to sew along that long edge to trap my straps inside that seam. Like some sort of squid, space squid. Taking my foot off the pedal and wondering why it's getting slower. Alright there, genius. So now what I've got is a pair of straps which are angled very slightly towards the middle, which means they're already kind of wanting to go across my opposite shoulder. Like that. So I have a waist front and a waist back. Ideally I want a whole waist, right? So I'm going to stitch those together. So I'm going to take the sides at the short edges, right sides together, the waist front and the waist back. The tail's out of the way. And I'm going to stitch those guys together. Now here we're using the seam allowance that the pattern states because this is a patterned seam. On the Sirocco that is 10mm. And I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side, so making sure I'm not twisted anywhere. I've got my one seam done, and do the same on the other one. So now what you should have is a waistband, which if you turn these wrong sides together, you'll have a waistband with a bib front and straps in the back. You're now ready to attach that to your trousers. So I've already made the trousers, they're all done. So what I need to do now, take the pattern piece out of the way, is fix this into here. So with my bib front the right way out, doesn't really have a right way out because everything's kind of symmetrical, but you know, maybe I've got a little pucker up here that I'd rather was against me than shown to the world, so I'm going to keep that on the inside. So if I feel like I've got a right side, so that's my right side. That's going down into the trousers with the bib against the front of the trousers and the straps against the back. So I'm going to post him into there. And what you're doing once you've got all that wrestled into there and you're thoroughly confused is match up your side seams with your waistband side seams. I'm going to pin everything to within an inch of its life here. There's a lot going on. So side seam to side seam. I made the trousers a little while ago. You can tell because I've got black on the seams here and I've got rainbow on my new seams. Then I'm going to pin centre front of the waistband to centre front of the trousers. Double checking that I've got my front on my front and my back on my back. Bib back, not so effective. And in between the side seams and the centres, I'm just going to stretch it all through evenly and just pin it around so that I know I've got everything stretched neatly and I've got no areas where I've got a big baggy bit of waist and then a really tight bit. I want to be able to get my lunch in as well. Very important. Making sure all my raw edges line up, my trousers and my waist. There's a lot of pins. And I'm going to flip him over and do the same on the back. Centre back against the centre back seam. Stretched evenly between side seams and centre. Matching up all my raw edges. I'm kind of kicking my tails and ends out of the way so that they just get chopped off by the overlocker because I hate doing ends. I'm moving out of the way because I've got rather more bulk going on now. So now I'm stitching all the way around the waistband. I like to start in the centre back. That's just me. You start wherever you like. This again is a patterned seam, so the Sirocco states 10mm. I'm actually only going to take 6 because I want a slightly deeper waistband. Right, so moment of truth. Let's find out if I had everything the right way round. Oh dear. A few tails left behind there. Deal with them later. So I'm going to turn the whole thing the right way around, and what I should find in here is a pair of dungarees. Oh my days, those are so cute. So all that's left for me to do now is my straps. So I've got my straps on the back, which I want crossed over and coming over the opposite sides to the bib. So what needs to happen now, I need to attach my straps to my sliders. This can get a little bit confusing, so you're going to post, I might get this wrong and have to do it again. You're going to post your straps and make sure it's flat all the way through. Post your strap down through the loop so that it's on the back of your strap coming through. Have I even done that right? No. See? What I'm going to do first is put my slider on. That nearly went really well. I'm going to thread my slider on, move the slider up and down. This is going to be super fiddly. There is a way to do this before you've done this bit, but I feel like I can't get everything right at that stage, so I'm doing it the super fiddly way and doing it at the end. So I've made sure I've got my strap smooth all the way through, so there's no twists in it. I've gone up one side of my slider, down the other, down through my loop. Then I'm going to find the back of my slider and go up through that, the front of my slider and go down through that. So what I've got there is a bit of a mess, but what I'll show you, I'm going to stitch this together. So my finished end is going to get stitched onto my strap just with my sewing machine. So I'm just going to run over that a few times just to make sure it's nice and secure. So I'm actually done with you for now. So using my sewing machine, where I've threaded my strap up through my slider and back, the loose end now just needs stitching in place. Now this is really fiddly, so kind of get everything out of the way that you can. He's going under the foot. You might find that you need to pull more through. This is why we left a lot to play with, so that you can get the whole lot under the foot. Lift my foot right up, and I'm actually going to try and start in the middle, because if I try and start at the end, it'll probably get shoved and I'll end up with the straps that are like that, which I'd like to avoid if I can. You could also do that bit by hand if your hand sewing is nice and strong. So now what I have, apart from a load of ends that I know I have to deal with, is a sliding strap that has no loose ends. So I can tighten and loosen that strap, and there are no dangly ends to dip in your soup. So now I need to do exactly the same with the other one. So I'm going to come back over here. It's really worth kind of laying this all out and making sure you've got your straps going the right direction. It's really confusing, and it's worth doing it carefully. So my other strap here, You can decide if you want left over right or right over left. I'm not too fussy. So I'm going to go making sure my strap's nice and smooth. I'm going to thread my slider on, up one side, down the other. Then I'm going to take my end down from front to back through my loop. I'm going to pull this out of the way. And I'm going up the back with my slider and down the front. Now you can be super careful here and make sure you get your both straps the same length, but because it's an adjustable strap, it doesn't matter. You might end up with one slider here and the other slider up here. Oh well, that's cool. So I've gone up the back, down the front, giving myself lots of length to mess with here. I'll try and get in the same, roughly, how much did I leave there? And I'm going to do the same, so I'm going to stitch him down there. What I'm trying to do, because I'm really particular, is I'm trying to drop my stitching on top of my already done top stitching so that I don't have like 3 different lines of stitching. No one's ever going to see it, but I know it's there. Nearly had to wear the sewing machine then. There we go. So now I have Sirocco trousers with a bib front and straps. I think a black and white stripy t-shirt under this would look so cute. I'd love to see yours. I'd love to see everybody's little hacked dungarees. Don't be afraid to hack patterns. It's so much fun. I do it all the time. It gives you something completely unique that even the original designer didn't think of. So tag me online, I'm Lindsey's Little Legs. Check out the UK Stretch Fabrics members group on Facebook, and I'll see you online.